Ambassador Liana Ross scanned the vast Galactic Council chamber, her gaze steady as she prepared to address the gathered representatives of the major alien species. For decades, humanity had played a careful game here, navigating diplomacy with caution, and earning a reputation as skilled negotiators and peacekeepers. They believed in the power of words and agreements, in diplomacy over destruction. Yet today, her tone had changed. Liana stood before them, the weight of her people's patience pressing down on her. "Distinguished members of the Council," she began, her voice unwavering, "I come before you not only as a representative of Earth, but as a voice for millions of innocent lives who depend on this body for peace." She paused, letting her words settle over the assembly. Most representatives met her gaze with quiet respect, but some, like High Commander Zorthan of the Xenaxians, barely contained their sneers. Zorthan's contempt was blatant, the ridges of his face creasing into a smug grin as he lounged in his seat. "As we speak," she continued, "human colonies in the Atria system are under attack by Xenaxian forces, despite our long-standing treaties affirming their right to peace and protection. Innocent lives have been lost, families torn apart, children taken from their homes." She gestured to the screen behind her, where grainy images from the attacked colonies played. The images depicted burning cities, families fleeing, and guards carrying away children. "Our only request," she said, her voice low, "is that this council take action to uphold the treaties we all agreed to." Liana let the silence linger, hoping her appeal would stir a response, a spark of empathy. She could see a few heads nodding. There was support, but it was scattered and tentative. Finally, Zorthan shifted in his seat, his low, guttural laugh breaking the silence. "Your words are heartfelt, Ambassador Ross," he sneered, feigning sincerity. "But words don't win battles, nor do they secure territories. Your species, you cling to these ideals of fairness, of peace, as though they mean something in the grand scheme of survival." He leaned forward, his gaze predatory. "Weak species, Ambassador, are meant to serve. Those treaties you hold dear are mere suggestions to those who truly hold power." The tension in the room thickened. Liana's knuckles turned white as she gripped the edge of the podium. "So you openly admit to violating the agreements this council exists to protect?" Zorthan's smirk grew. "We've done nothing outside the natural order. If humanity cannot defend its claims, perhaps those claims are forfeit." Outrage flared from several other representatives, but Zorthan's allies remained silent, his words emboldening those who saw humanity as little more than an idealistic anomaly among the ruthless empires. One of the council members, an elder from a distant, peaceful species, spoke softly. "Ambassador Ross, we are saddened by the losses humanity has endured, but enforcing actions against the Xenaxian Empire would destabilize much more than we can afford." The words were carefully chosen but carried the weight of dismissal. Liana's heart sank, the cold realization settling in her chest. Humanity stood alone. The council would not take their side, not against a powerful member like the Xenaxians, not when so many saw Earth as just another young race trying to claim its place. A final surge of desperation pushed her forward. "If we allow this, then what are our treaties worth? What future can we build if might alone determines justice?" The council was silent. No one answered her plea. One by one, representatives avoided her gaze, choosing indifference over integrity. She took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "If you won't act, humanity will. We will not be abandoned by the principles we have upheld and sacrificed for." The meeting ended without resolution. As the council chambers emptied, Liana lingered, staring at the now empty seats where her appeals had fallen on deaf ears. Her mind raced, caught between frustration and a growing anger that simmered quietly, steadily. They had underestimated humanity, treated their compassion as weakness, their desire for peace as naivety. But she knew her people, knew their capacity to fight when pushed too far. She knew that even their compassion had limits. As she walked out of the chamber, one of her aides approached her, a look of grim understanding on his face. "What now, Ambassador?" She turned to him, her voice as calm as steel. "We've given them every chance to make this right. They made their choice. Now we'll make ours." Ambassador Liana Ross stood before the transmission screen, her face framed by tension and determination as she reached out one final time to the Xanaxian leadership. Her voice was steady, carefully measured, as she began. High Commander Zorthan, in the name of every life affected, I am appealing to your sense of reason. Withdraw from the Atria system peacefully. We have no desire for conflict, only for our people to live in safety, as do yours. Zorthan's image appeared on the screen, his expression a mask of disdainful amusement. Ambassador Ross, he said in a voice that was both dismissive and mocking. Your people place too much faith in words and principles. You appeal to a sense of reason as though it will alter the balance of power. Your ideals make you weak. She held back her frustration, her face impassive. This is not a question of ideals, High Commander, but of lives, families, children, people who wish only to live in peace. Your actions defy every agreement we have stood by. He waved a dismissive hand. The strong will always take from the weak. Such is the way of the galaxy, Ambassador. Perhaps it's time humanity learned that lesson. With that, the transmission ended, leaving her alone with her thoughts in the quiet of the room. The weight of her responsibility pressed down on her, heavier than ever before. She thought of the countless lives lost, of the families left broken, and the colonies lying in ruins. They had pursued every avenue, exhausted every diplomatic resource, and yet, at every turn, they were met with disdain and cruelty. As she returned to the council chambers, reports were already flooding in. Messages from survivors, desperate calls for help from colonies now under Xanaxian control, each one recounting a horror that made her blood run cold. Stories of families torn apart, of those who resisted being forced into labor, of entire settlements razed to instill fear. Ambassador Ross convened with her closest advisors, leaders of the Human Council, military officials, and scientists. They pored over the staggering loss humanity had endured, the destroyed settlements, the lives ended far too soon. And then the harrowing realization hit them: the Council, their supposed allies, would do nothing to stop it. One of the generals leaned forward, a dark, hardened expression on his face. Ambassador, we cannot sit idly by while our people are enslaved and killed. This council was our last hope for peace, and they turned their backs on us. Liana met his gaze, the weight of her position bearing down on her shoulders. We've fought for peace for so long. We held to our ideals even when others mocked us for it. Her voice softened, a mix of sorrow and steel. But those ideals cannot be held up by humanity alone. They were supposed to be universal. A young scientist spoke up, his voice tense with suppressed anger. We have technologies that could turn the tide, Ambassador. Advanced systems we've kept dormant to avoid escalation. We've trusted in diplomacy as our strength, but it seems that trust has only made us vulnerable. There was a somber silence in the room. Every face reflected a mixture of sadness and a smoldering anger, a sense of betrayal that reached into their very core. Liana looked around at her team, the people who had worked tirelessly, fought so hard to build a future based on understanding and cooperation. The pain was evident, the frustration clear. The final slivers of patience were gone, replaced by a resolve they had all feared they might one day need. We must ensure they understand, Liana said quietly, a fierce determination lighting her eyes. If they won't listen to reason, then they will listen to action. Let them see that humanity's pursuit of peace was not weakness. Let them understand that we will protect our own. The others nodded, expressions hardening as they saw the shift within her. They had tried every diplomatic path, held on to their ideals with all they had. But now, the Council's silence, the Xanaxian arrogance, and the galaxy's indifference had left them with no choice. It was time to show the galaxy the strength humanity had kept in reserve, the might they had restrained in the name of peace. After the meeting, she watched as preparations began, orders sent out across colonies and fleets ready for battle. Her heart ached for what would come, the battles that loomed on the horizon, the lives that would be risked. But there was no doubt left in her mind. The breaking point had been reached. She could feel the weight of the past slipping away, the countless attempts to foster harmony and mutual respect. They had built bridges, negotiated peace, worked for alliances. And it had led them here, standing alone, facing a galaxy that had dismissed their pleas, betrayed their trust. Now, they would show a galaxy that had underestimated them that peace had always been their choice, not their limit. As the day came to an end, Ambassador Ross looked out into the stars, her expression resolute. She whispered softly to herself, a vow that resonated deep within her. They will remember us. The silence of preparation filled every corner of humanity's command centers. Fleet commanders, scientists, and intelligence operatives worked in unison, every action precise, deliberate. This was no longer diplomacy. Humanity had shifted into a state that few within the Galactic Council could have predicted. Strategies were laid out with a clarity and purpose that belied the deep anger simmering beneath the surface. For so long, humanity had shown restraint, but now their forces moved with a relentless, calculated determination. Across the galaxy, the Xenaxian Empire, still basking in its perceived victory, remained unaware of the storm about to break upon them. The human fleet moved swiftly, each ship equipped with technologies that had, until now, remained hidden from every other species. Humanity had always prioritized peace, holding back advances that could disrupt the balance. But now, each technological edge, each innovation honed in silence, was being unleashed with precise fury. The first strike came at the outermost Xenaxian outposts. Human ships emerged from hyperspace, their weapons systems locking onto targets with surgical accuracy. Within moments, the outposts were decimated, their defenses unable to withstand the ferocity of the human assault. Messages of distress were sent to the Xenaxian command, but they were already too late. Human forces moved from one target to the next, dismantling supply lines, disabling weapon depots, and severing communication hubs with ruthless precision. It was an operation meticulously planned and flawlessly executed. As the Xenaxians scrambled to understand the scope of the attacks, humanity broadcast a single message across the galaxy, a statement that resonated beyond the battlefield. To those who believed in strength over integrity, this is your lesson. Humanity will defend its own. The message echoed through council halls, alien colonies, and Xenaxian fortresses, carrying a weight that left no room for misunderstanding. Humanity's warning was neither a threat nor a boast. It was a declaration of intent. In the central command of the Galactic Council, where diplomatic conversations had once been the standard, the members now stood in silent shock, watching the live feeds from their screens. Reports of the destruction flowed in, each message more alarming than the last. The quiet, unassuming species they had dismissed as idealistic had become a force of terrifying resolve. Their precision, efficiency, and restraint in avoiding civilian targets spoke volumes. Humanity wasn't acting out of mindless vengeance. They were asserting a boundary, one that no species would be allowed to cross again. High Commander Zorthan himself was now on edge, his once dismissive attitude replaced with a cold recognition of the scale of humanity's response. His forces, accustomed to easy victories and unchallenged authority, now found themselves facing an opponent who outmatched them in both strategy and firepower. Every attempt to regroup, every counter-strategy, was met with swift, decisive retaliation. As the human fleet advanced, they made calculated moves that kept Xenaxian civilians unharmed. Humanity's strikes were brutal but focused, dismantling the Empire's infrastructure with a methodical clarity that left onlookers stunned. It was as if they were saying, "We came for justice, not for blood." This choice, this refusal to harm innocent lives, made the impact of their actions even more profound. Other species observed the unfolding events with awe, realizing that humanity was sending a clear message: peace was not weakness, and mercy was not permission. Within the council chambers, murmurs of respect and fear spread among the representatives of various species. The elder council members, who had once dismissed humanity's appeals, now found themselves re-evaluating their perceptions. They had seen humanity as idealistic, overly reliant on words and treaties. But in the wake of this response, they understood that humanity's choice for peace had been exactly that, a choice, not a limitation. Ambassador Ross's voice came through in another broadcast, calm and unyielding. Humanity sought peace, upheld treaties, and extended trust to each of you in this council. We honored our agreements because we believed in building something greater. But trust betrayed becomes a weapon forged against us, and today, we reclaim what you would not defend. The council members listened in silence, some out of respect, others out of the quiet fear that came from realizing they had misjudged humanity's resolve. The human ambassador's words were not only directed at the Xenaxians but to every species that had ignored their plight. Her voice carried a promise, a stark reminder that humanity's patience, though vast, was not infinite. As the human fleet moved further into Xenaxian territory, the impact rippled across the galaxy. On planets where once there was contempt for humanity's ideals, there was now a newfound respect, even fear. Stories of the human retaliation spread quickly, tales of their restraint mixed with undeniable strength. They had dismantled the might of an empire without stooping to the cruelty shown to them. It was a calculated act of justice, one that left no doubt of humanity's capability, or their refusal to be treated as lesser. In the final phase of the assault, the human fleet arrived at the Xenaxian central stronghold, the heart of their empire. High Commander Zorthan, facing the reality of his empire's crumbling power, watched helplessly as his defenses fell. He finally understood that he had underestimated a species whose capacity for peace was matched only by their willingness to protect it. The Xenaxian leadership was forced into submission, sending out pleas to the Galactic Council for mediation, appeals that humanity allowed only to emphasize the choice they had made. Humanity demanded reparations, demanded accountability for the countless lives lost and damaged by Xenaxian aggression. And the galaxy, watching every step of this calculated, disciplined response, understood that humanity would never be underestimated again. Ambassador Ross's final message to the Council echoed through every transmission line, her words etched into the minds of every species. We are not here to conquer. We are here to ensure that those who seek peace may do so without fear of betrayal. Humanity has upheld this ideal and will continue to do so. Know that peace with us is a partnership. Anything else is merely a warning. And so, with one decisive act, humanity redefined its place in the galaxy, leaving behind a lasting reminder that while they pursued peace with open hands, they could also protect it with a clenched fist. In the aftermath of humanity's calculated response, the galaxy stood in a tense silence, as if holding its breath. The Xenaxian Empire, once an intimidating force, lay weakened and humbled, its leaders bowing before the Galactic Council with a desperate plea for mediation. The same council that had dismissed humanity's calls for justice now found themselves facing the undeniable reality of what ignoring humanity had wrought. There was no denying it. Humanity had demonstrated strength they had all overlooked, and the consequences were now impossible to ignore. Ambassador Liana Ross, the steady voice of humanity, entered the council chamber once more. Her presence commanded a newfound respect, and the alien representatives who once looked at her with skepticism now regarded her with a solemn understanding. She held her head high, her gaze unyielding, a figure of quiet authority that even the most arrogant members of the council could not overlook. This time, it was the Xenaxians who faced judgment. Their leader, High Commander Zorthan, looked diminished, stripped of his once smug expression, his eyes averted as he listened to the demands humanity had brought forth. Ambassador Ross's words were measured, her tone steady and diplomatic, but the gravity of her statements was unmistakable. High Commander Zorthan, she addressed him directly. For years we sought peace, upheld treaties, and extended every diplomatic avenue to you and your empire. You disregarded it all, believing that our patience was weakness. Today you stand here not by choice, but because we have made it clear that humanity will not be trampled upon. Her words resonated through the chamber, each one a reminder of the choices the Xenaxians had made. Zorthan shifted uncomfortably, nodding in reluctant acceptance. The terms laid out were clear: reparations for the damage inflicted upon human colonies, a formal acknowledgement of the Xenaxian Empire's aggression, and binding assurances that such transgressions would never be repeated. The demands were fair, but there was no room left for negotiation. Humanity was no longer asking, they were setting the terms, and the Council, which had once looked on in indifference, was now in full support. The other council members, many of whom had been silent or dismissive during humanity's appeals, now expressed formal apologies, acknowledging their inaction. Species who had previously regarded humanity as naive now saw them in a different light, a force that chose peace but possessed the strength to protect it fiercely. Their apologies were laced with regret, an attempt to make amends for their oversight, for the dismissal that had led to this defining moment in galactic history. Liana's expression softened, though her resolve remained unbroken. "Our intent has never been conquest," she continued, addressing the council at large. "Humanity seeks partnership, trust, and cooperation. We believe in alliances, in mutual respect, and in the strength that comes from unity. But let this serve as a reminder: peace must be upheld by all, or it becomes meaningless." There was no dissent, only silence and solemn nods as her words sank in. The council members, from the smallest, most pacifist species to the largest and most war-driven empires, understood the message. Humanity's strength was not just in their technology or their military, it was in their resolve, their commitment to peace and justice, and their willingness to act when no one else would. Stories of the human response had already spread across the galaxy, retold with a mix of awe and respect. Alien species that had once dismissed humans as overly idealistic were now rethinking their views, realizing that their restraint had been a conscious choice, a decision made out of principle rather than necessity. The phrase, "humanity's breaking point," became a symbol, a lesson in the cost of disregarding peace and respect. As Ambassador Ross prepared to leave, one of the elder council members, a representative of a species known for its pacifism, stood and addressed her. "Ambassador Ross, humanity's strength is undeniable. But the way you have chosen to wield it, with restraint and justice, is a testament to your principles. The galaxy owes you its respect." She inclined her head slightly in acknowledgement, her expression thoughtful. "We are not unique in our values," she replied. "Every species here holds its own understanding of strength, its own vision of peace. Humanity's hope is that this event will remind us all that peace is worth defending, not just in word, but in action." The elder council member nodded, a sign of solidarity and respect that was echoed by others around the chamber. For the first time, humanity's voice held the weight it deserved. They were no longer seen as the hopeful idealists, nor as the naive newcomers. They were regarded as equals, partners who had proven their mettle and their willingness to protect what they valued. Leaving the council chamber, Liana felt the gravity of what had just transpired. This moment would shape the future of humanity's place within the galaxy, not through conquest or domination, but through respect and understanding. They had demonstrated their strength, not for the sake of power but to affirm their right to exist, to thrive, and to stand unbowed among the stars. Across human territories, the news spread, a source of pride tempered by the weight of the responsibility they had assumed. Humanity would forever be known as the species that fought for peace and had shown, when pushed, that they could defend it with a force that resonated throughout the cosmos. The galaxy now understood what it meant to challenge a people who valued peace yet possessed the will to guard it fiercely. In the following days, relations between humanity and the other species began to shift. New alliances were formed, not based on fear or power but on mutual respect. Humanity's actions had redefined the expectations of diplomatic strength, illustrating that peace was not merely the absence of conflict but a state that must be upheld and protected. The story of humanity's breaking point became a legend, one that echoed across distant planets, in the council's halls, and among the younger generations of every species. For years to come, alien parents would tell their children of the day humans reached their limit, not as a cautionary tale, but as an example of resolve and resilience. And the phrase, breaking point, became synonymous with an unyielding commitment to justice, a reminder that even the most peace-loving species had a line that, once crossed, would summon a strength born not of anger, but of purpose. Ambassador Ross stood among her people, a figure of calm dignity, knowing they had achieved what they set out to do. Humanity's reputation had transformed, and with it, the galaxy's understanding of what peace could mean. They had taught a lesson without sacrificing their values, leaving an impact that would be remembered for generations. And though the scars of betrayal would linger, they had emerged from it stronger, united, and forever vigilant. As the stars stretched out before them, humanity had solidified its place, a species that valued peace but would never again be seen as weak. The galaxy, in awe and respect, knew they would never forget the day humanity finally reached its breaking point.